Man City's 3-1 home win over Plymouth in the FA Cup fifth round. City were given a bit of a scare by their Championship counterparts, but and they of course knocked out Brentford and Liverpool in the previous rounds. But City turned things around thanks to a brace from Nico O'Reilly and obviously a goal as well from Kevin De Bruyne. So, what have you taken away from that performance, Stephen? What's impressed you from City's perspective?
Yeah, ultimately it was comfortable in the end, very comfortable. I mean, an astonishing amount of chances for City. It was like 10, 11 big chances or something like that. So it felt obviously awkward because they scored and the first half was a little bit laboured, if we're being honest. But in the end, it was a very routine game against a side, from a lower division. And City sort of got through. It felt like a little bit off, and we saw a lot of the older players play, which is weird to say that Gundogan, De Bruyne, and Bernardo are the rotation players now, but they essentially are. And there was a little bit of maybe apprehension for some of the fan base because it felt like a step backwards. And given the season we've had, it was frustrating to watch. But if we're being really honest, this is the most normal City result in a cup game. They always end up like this. Usually, of course, it's with players of, over the years, it's been people like Ferran Torres in the team, or Zinchenko or whatever, or some academy kids. But it's always been sort of disjointed, and it's always taken a second half sort of turnaround. I remember us doing it against Swindon. I remember us, taking a little bit of time to finish that game off and bringing in Gabriel Jesus and Kevin De Bruyne to win those games. So essentially, what I'm getting at is this is a very normal cup game where you change a bunch of players. It isn't fully fluid, but eventually you get the job done when you bring on a senior player like Haaland to be the focal point. So it was when you remove emotion away from it, we've seen it a billion times before. The plucky side, they score usually, and they've done it in previous years, not just this year. But then ultimately quality tells, and City go for the jugular in the second half, and they win comfortably, and that's what happened. And for me, looking back, looking at the bigger picture, yeah, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the fact that we're into the quarterfinals. Bournemouth away is going to be difficult. I'm sure we might touch on that later, but. We got through, I said United are out as a City fan. I love that. And I also think there's one or two stories from it which are particularly interesting. And I think we're finding our way into form right now. I think City are looking like a team again. Not brilliant, but we're looking like a team. I think Guardiola was happy afterwards. And I think rightfully so, because there are signs of, growing confidence, and the signs that City can pick up wins in different ways now again. And yeah, I ultimately, when that game finished, I was a happy man because I think we're heading in the right direction.
And I think it was great to see, in particular, Nico O'Reilly perform the way he did, and obviously contribute to a couple of goals. That's three for him now in the FA Cup after scoring in the previous round against Leyton Orient. And Kevin De Bruyne loves playing in the FA Cup. I think since his FA Cup debut in January 2016, he's been involved in more goals than any other player. It's 29 goal contributions, 10 goals, 19 assists. He contributed to all three against Plymouth. So, really impressive from him. How impressed were you in particular by O'Reilly and De Bruyne against Plymouth?
Yeah, great. I mean, Nico O'Reilly is a lad I've known about for an awful long time that most people probably won't realise was sort of like a false 9, 10 type character, for the under 18 side. Scored a few astonishingly brilliant technical goals. So he got a history as a goal scorer essentially. And look, I'm sure he wasn't meant to be like a number 9, but when you're 6'4", you're going to finish chances or get chances like that because of that height. And he took both of his goals really well and strongly as well. The second one in particular, Plymouth were calling for a foul. It wasn't. He was just stronger than him, especially by the today's referee standards. Like people shove Haaland all the time, and this was a lot less aggressive than that. So I think the referee was right to give it, and they were good finishes. And I'm of the opinion that Nico Riley should be a guy, not because of these two goals, but because of his overall ability. He should be a guy that should be around the first team anyway, because he's fast. He's 6'4". He's technically really good. He's a good passer, versatile in multiple positions. A Manchester lad, club trained. I might even be a City fan. I'm not sure. And he can score goals. Once again, in the modern era with physicality and strength and all that, if you can get a guy who can do it all, keep him in the team, even if it's just as a backup left back to Josko Vardiol. I think he's shown time and time again he is not out of his depth in professional football. And if it's just for next season, he's doing these kind of shifts still, where maybe more games, hopefully, off the bench in the Premier League and so on. But if he's doing this still, he'll get better and better. Before you know it, He could be a regular starter in 2 or 3 years from now. So I thought he was good, and it was nice to see De Bruyne find some form again. In the first half, I thought his radar was off a little bit, and I was worried that it was sort of just what we've seen recently from De Bruyne, where he can't quite get his feet to follow his mind. But second half, he was much more like Kevin De Bruyne. A couple of rasping shots. The one from the corner was particularly fun. Obviously, got his tapping goal, but a nice assist, for Nico O'Reilly from the cross as well. And ultimately, I think De Bruyne enjoyed himself out there. For me, though, the actual story, which wasn't on our agenda, was actually Vitor Reis. I was really impressed with him. And I'm not exaggerating to say I've been thinking about his performance since the weekend because I know it was only yesterday, the weekend, but I'm getting that since full-time whistle,
Yeah.
basically. Because all the attention's been around Kusanov because he's been excellent, aggressive, physical. And I'm going to be honest, like the first game against Leyton Orient, I thought he looked composed. But I wasn't so sure if Vitor Reis would, be ready if needed anytime soon because he looks quite slender. He didn't have much physical stuff to do, and I think there was one time when he was sort of beating the pace at one point. I thought, you know what, he looks talented, composed, but I don't know if he's going to be there yet physically for a while. I was really impressed with him against Plymouth. There's so many videos going around of his aerial dominance, and I noticed it during the game. The amount of times he'd leap like a salmon, and get above the defender. He's winning headers for fun. And I looked at the stats afterwards, and I think he completed like 9 out of 11 aerial duels against a big man up top as well, against a side that know how to be physical and direct. I was really impressed by his physicality, once again, as well as his composure. He's that kind of defender who doesn't just head the ball, he heads and passes the ball at the same time. Kusanov's like that too, which is a very rare trait where they don't just clear it, they pass it. And that combined with physicality, and of course, he's got some experience already. But the way he spoke after the game as well, he spoke a captain. So I've been sat there thinking after the last couple of days, like, Kusanov looks brilliant. Vitor Reis is actually slightly more ahead than I realised he was, because even though he's only slight slender, he's physically aggressive and he's strong. He looks like a young John Stones. Like, you could watch a compilation from that game, and you could genuinely, if someone told you, just blanked it out, that was John Stones in 16-17 when he joined City, I would honestly believe you, because the similarities to the way he approached the game and the way he moves were uncanny. So yeah, that for me was exciting because I think he's going to be a brilliant footballer. I think all the hype around him, the fact that Real Madrid wanted him and all these other sides, I saw it. Just Plymouth, I get it. But physically, I was really impressed with his composure as well. Yeah, to me, that was very exciting because we've seen Kusanov look brilliant, and I think Vitor Reis might just be as exciting.
And I think those two, Vitor Reis and Cousinov, we might actually see a bit more of them now towards the end of the season because, of course,
Yeah,
Akanji and Stones are out for several weeks. And in that game against Plymouth, Nathan Aki, who's been troubled with injuries all
yeah.
season, he went off at half time. Ruben Diaz seems to be all right for now, but he obviously had his fitness issues. So do you think, City going to have to rely on Cousinov and Reis maybe a little bit more towards the end of the season?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have no choice, and I think Guardiola was very thankful afterwards, saying, "Look, I'm glad that we got these two because otherwise we just have Ruben Diaz." Um, Look, I'm glad Jamar Simpson Pusey, a bit this season, but I mean this with the greatest respect for him. He looks such a talent, but even in just these glimpses, what we've seen of Kusanov and Kusanov in particular, and Vitor Reis, they do look that they're ahead of him. Like they do look like they're more they're more complete. Like for example, Simpson Pusey might be City's best young academy prospect, but I think Vitor Reis is the best young defensive prospect in South America potentially, which is like it's a different level of like he's covering the whole region here, and that's not to say City's academy players can't be brilliant too. They obviously are, but I think he's way more ready. So I think Guardiola will have no trouble leaning on these two, especially at home. In games where City are controlling the ball and so on, like we were against Plymouth, and we've got getting better at that. For example, I don't know, Leicester at home, Vitor Reis and Kusanov. Is that if that was your pairing? I wouldn't be concerned, and this might sound mad. I wouldn't even be concerned away at Old Trafford right now, given their form, where we're at. Look, I'm sure Chris Wood would have, a little bit of joy potentially. But yeah, I think they've got an inherent quality, and the one thing I've been impressed by, the new signings so far, which sort of struck me as well after the game, is that they got so much personality. And it doesn't mean they're necessarily good enough, but they definitely have the right mental attributes. I was so impressed with the composure and the conviction to Vitor Reis's game against Plymouth. I know it's just Plymouth once again, but Kusanov as well. He's had an insane run of games, like Chelsea, Real Madrid, Newcastle, Liverpool, Spurs. It's been so hard. Yeah, he looks like he takes it all in his stride. Similar personality for Nico Gonzalez, Marmoush as well. These guys have conviction, and that thing that's something that really excites me because I think honestly that's half the battle. So, yeah, the young lads, yeah, I trust them, and I think Guardiola does too.
Yeah, I think really exciting impression that they've made so far, these four new signings. And in the FA Cup now, City will they back themselves to get to Wembley because I think since Guardiola's arrived, they've got there in seven of the last eight seasons to at least the semi-final stage of the FA Cup. But before then, they've obviously got to now face Bournemouth away in the quarter-finals. So what are your thoughts on that? How tough's that going to be away at Bournemouth? It's probably one of the toughest draws they could have had considering the teams that are left in the competition.
Yeah, I look. Bournemouth are a side that given City an awful lot of trouble. You know, in the previous meeting, we're in a better place since then. But Bournemouth are arguably in a better place too. You know, they've been aggressive. You know, seventh in the league. Areola's done a phenomenal job. They've had some big wins, not perfect, you know. They lost to Wolves recently, and Brighton, but they're such a cracking side, and they're sort of built to cause City trouble with the pace and intensity. The only thing is, last time we played them, I'm just scrolling back now to double check. This is City's midfield and team. City had that day Kovacic, Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, you know, and much has been made of the lack of and Kanji Ake and Kyle Walker were playing. It's a very different side. Nunes was on his left wing since then. Like City are such a different side since then, and it'll be unrecognisable. And they gave us so much trouble when they beat us 2-1, but they were the better side by some way. But City are a different side now. You know, we had more on the ball that day, even then. But City, this side is much more diverse, I would say, with its skill set. It's younger, it's more aggressive. And for me, you know, I feel that we can beat them. And at that point, you put us as favourites for the FA Cup. And look, I really want to win the FA Cup this year. I can give or take it most years, which sounds quite, you know, arrogant. I don't mean it that way, but it's very obvious that City's targets are the Champions League and the Premier League. And look, if City win the Premier League and we never win the FA Cup, I wouldn't be bothered because obviously it's the bigger trophy. But this year, given the context, you know, of everything, and it's all we've got left to, admittedly, you know, so it's not like, you know, beggars can't be choosers and all that. But this year in particular, given the season that we've had, you know, given the makeup of the squad as well with new players, I can't think of many things that would be a better catalyst for future success than an FA Cup victory now. Like, if we could win this FA Cup this year, and Nico Gonzalez and Vitor Reis and Kusanov and, you know, the young lads, and all these guys, like they get a taste of success already and get their first trophy. And then we build on that with the Club World Cup and some new signings. Like it'll put us in such a good place, and I think the belief will rocket through the squad again. And I think it'll be an incredibly positive end to a very testing season, the most difficult in Guardiola's career. And I think that would say a lot about the mentality of this club. Is that, you know, and I think it'd feel like vindication for Cheeky and Viana, who you know, off the record are working together in January. So I think, yeah, it'd be massive to win the FA Cup this year, especially if you get Champions League football too. So I want it. I want it big time, and I'm hoping we're going to get it.